Everyone you know sniffling, sneezing, and coughing these days, well, you're going to want to listen to today's episode. Welcome to Living a Nutritious Life. I'm your host, Keri Glassman, and today is all about a stronger, more resilient immune system. Joining me today is the trailblazing thought leader in functional medicine, Dr. Jeffrey Bland. We'll dive into what he calls immuno-rejuvenation in today's episode, a revolutionary approach to invigorate our body's defenses by fostering the growth of immune cells. Dr. Bland shares his insights on the powerful benefits of Himalayan Tartary buckwheat. You heard that right, Himalayan Tartary buckwheat, an ancient superfood that contains over 150 different flavonoids, which are key to immune support. We also discuss the critical role of gut health and the intricate relationship between pre and probiotics, and why nurturing our microbiome is essential to our well-being. So if you're eager to take a proactive stance on your immune health, you don't want to miss this. And as always, please rate, review, and share this podcast with friends if you love it. And don't forget to check out the show notes for more info on Dr. Bland and links to topics discussed in today's episode. So thank you, Dr. Jeffrey Bland, for being here today. I'm so excited to have you. It was funny, as the father of functional medicine, when I met you finally last February, I believe, at IHS, I couldn't believe that I'd never met you in person before. So that was such a treat to meet you then, such a treat to have you on the podcast today. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, it was my treat, and I've been looking forward to this with great anticipation, and I guess we'll probably see one another again in February at the next IHS. So
absolutely. I'm excited about that. It's always a great event. All right, so let's dive in here. I think that many people out there have no idea what immunorejuvenation is. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that today. And, as I've already mentioned, Jeff is, again, the person in functional medicine, the person behind the whole notion of food is medicine. And really, again, the leading authority, I would say, in functional medicine. And you're just such a wealth of knowledge. And I'm so excited to learn from you. And I'm so excited for our listeners to learn from you today about this term that you have coined, immunorejuvenation, which I'm sure some people may be familiar with, but I'm sure there's many people out there that are not familiar with. But I kind of want to just go back a step and just talk about immune health in general for a moment, just to sort of refresh some people's memories if they aren't aware. I mean, I think people's understanding of immune health there's a wide spectrum of what people understand and know. So just as a little refresher for people, we know the immune system is designed to defend the body against foreign or dangerous invaders. These invaders can be microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, parasites, cancer cells. And many people, and I'm curious if you agree, also know that the immune system has to be able to distinguish between what belongs in the body, right, and what does not belong in the body. And I think also many people know that there's a normal immune response, and then there are cases of this autoimmune response, and then there's also immunodeficiency, and then there's allergic reactions. So kind of just wanted to lay that out there, because now I want to ask you, what do we know about the immune system as it relates specifically to longevity? So really, what's the immune system's role in longevity?
Well, thank you. And once again, it's a privilege to have the chance to play jazz with you here and have this discussion, because I think this topic of immunity has risen up now, probably on the heels of SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19 of being one of the more dominant and important issues that we are addressing, not only as individuals, but as a global population. And I think what you said about the immune system is absolutely correct, but there is another part of it that has been often kind of neglected to be discussed, and that is the immune system does more than just defend us against foreign bacteria, viruses, and transformed cells. The immune system is operating 24/7, 365 as one of the only two systems in the body that's sampling the outside world and telling the inside body how it should respond, the other being the nervous system. And the immune system and nervous system work together very intimately to create our body's response to how we are going to look, act, and feel over the years of living. And so the immune system is certainly there to defend us against infection, but it's also there to recycle dead tissues. It's there to remodel our cells in our body that really reside in virtually every tissue and every organ. And as the harder we look, the more we find the immune system is everywhere. We have an immune system in our muscles. We have an immune system in our liver. We have an immune system in our brain. We have an immune system, obviously, in our gut. That's where more than 60% of our immune system is clustered. So the immune system, the skin, I could go on, multiple organs. So it has a very, very central role to play in actually how we respond to daily living. And over years, how our body will then be remodeled into how it looks, acts, and feels. And I think it's interesting to note that the immune system itself is being reformed in a regular basis. Most people don't know that our immune system cells, the cells that are occupied in our body that are doing immune function, are turning over and being replaced about every 90 to 120 days. So something like every 3 to 4 months, our immune system is actually made up of different cells than it was the previous 3 to 4 months. Now, the question is, those new cells that come in to replace the old cells, are they the same, better, or worse than the ones they're replacing? And what has been found, and this is, I think, really the aha that relates to the answer to your question, what has been found is that over time, individual, as they have birthdays, their immune system is less able, not more able, but less able to do all the work that it should be doing. And so our immune system aging is directly correlated with our age as a biological organism, the so-called biological age, rather than our age and birthday. So our ultimate health and even our longevity is directly related to the health and age of our immune system. In fact, scientists are now saying that if you want to predict how long you're going to live, you do so by understanding the age of your immune system. It's the most determinant for our longevity and our health, our so-called health span. So we have kind of taken the immune system from a position of being a defender against infection to a whole nother role that it plays in the complex nature of how our body regulates its function over years of living. And there is now evidence recently published studying centenarians, people of 100 years of age and older. And it's been found that in general, they have very, very much younger immune systems than their age and birthdays. Whereas people that are chronically ill, when you do studies on the age of their immune system, and there are now scientific methods that can allow us to do that. I could go into it in greater detail if you'd like, but it's been found with people that are chronically ill, like people that have had post-COVID syndrome, their immune system is older than their age and birthdays. So then it begs the question, is this a one-way street? I mean, it sounds no one wants their immune system to be older than their age and birthdays. You'd like it to be younger. So if you happen to be in a situation, like post-COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia, or I could go down the list of various disorders of the immune system, does it mean you're locked in for the rest of your life? And the answer to that question is no, you're not. This is reversible. It's a two-way street. And that's what we call
amazing.
We call immunorejuvenation.
Okay, that's incredible. So I've got a few questions for you. Yeah, because when I was talking about immune system at the top of this conversation, I was really discussing it in the most simple way that I think most people think about it. Like that's, even if some people probably what I said, some people don't even know that much about it, but I would say at most people know that. They don't understand all that you just talked about. I think that's probably new for the large majority of people out there. They don't think about it as being, that playing that much of a role in our health and longevity. So I think just understanding that point alone is hugely important for people. And I also think the other thing that I just want to ask about, you mentioned how our immune system cells turnover. What did you say? Every 90 to 120 days?
Yes.
Okay. So there's obviously things we can do there to improve what those new cells look like, right?
That's right.
And to
And
me,
it's not boosting. Let me make a very, very important point here, because I think there has been a historical view around nutrition and the immune system that we want to boost the immune system. But if you have an injured immune system that's prematurely aged, and it's carrying a bunch of zombie cells around your body, that's what these cells are often called, zombie cells. They're damaged immune cells.
right.
Boosting them doesn't make you better.
Yeah.
It may boost the wrong things. What you want to
Right.
do is rejuvenate your immune system to bring the
Yeah.
young, vital immune cells to do the work for you.
Right. Well, I always talk about it as supporting your immune system. You want to support the immune system, but I like your term immunorejuvenation much better than that. So let's talk about immunorejuvenation in a little bit more detail. So you explained the connection to longevity and to, and how your immune system can be the same age, or you could be younger or older than your biological age. But can you explain immunorejuvenation even further? Like, what do you do to, let's say you're someone that has had COVID or has fibromyalgia or has been sick, or is just someone that has a poor immune system? What can they do to make sure that every 90 to 20 days, they're breaking the cycle, they're reversing some of the damage, and they are improving those new cells that come to be every cycle?
I think you've asked the most singular important question in our society today. If we
Who knew? Boo! I want like bells to go off here.
Precisely. If we really have expectations that we would like to live 100 years of healthy living and celebrate our 100th birthday, then we need to be thoughtful about our immune systems. Now, some people are genetically fortunate. They were born with a collection of genes that are resilient against all sorts of things, and they seem to survive against all odds and do well into their centenarian age. But that's the exception, not the rule. Most individuals who are successful in living with vital health and increased health span into their 100-year birthday are individuals that have had certain kind of dietary and lifestyle habits that are associated, as we study them from a scientific perspective, with what we call immunorejuvenation. Now, I need to say that this term, which I coined about 3 years ago, I'm really quite amazed to see how the body of science has, in the last 3 years, picked up on this term, or the concept that underlies the term, and the mechanism by which our immune system rejuvenates itself is now being centerpiece in immunology research. And in fact, I just did a little survey of the 2023 scientific papers that are around this area of understanding the mechanism by which our immune system can regenerate itself or rejuvenate itself, remodel itself. And there are, this last year alone, several hundred papers in the scientific literature that are starting to explore the mechanism by which the body does it. I mean, clearly we've had this process all along, but only recently have we started to understand what that process is.
Right.
And the powerful thing about it is that we've learned that things that are in our daily living are factors that actually are associated with our ability to rejuvenate our immune system, like how we sleep, the stress we're under, the exposure to toxins, the kind of foods we eat, the kind of dietary principles we have, the kind of activity patterns that we have. I mean, things that fall under the concept of, well, these are activities of daily living. Doesn't everybody do this? Doesn't everybody breathe? Doesn't everybody eat? Doesn't everybody sleep? Yes, at some level, probably people do, but not necessarily at levels that are really leading to their immune system getting the best chance to rejuvenate itself. And that's where we're really focusing our energy on. How do you do that?
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because a lot of those things that you just mentioned really sound a lot like living a nutritious life. And that's why when I talk about it, even 20 plus years ago, when I started my nutrition practice in New York City, I always said I didn't want to just talk about food. I wanted to talk about stress and sleep and your environment and all of these other, what I call pillars of a nutritious life, because it isn't just about the food. It's all of these other pillars, and it's how they all work together physiologically and behaviorally. I mean, all of the things you mentioned obviously play a role in our immune system, but the environmental factor too seems to have just, I mean, I know our diet has changed dramatically too over the past, X amount of years, but the environmental factor seems to have just be getting worse and worse. I don't want to say daily, but it seems like definitely monthly and yearly, it seems like it's getting worse and worse. I mean, I read something that adults take in, I think, approximately 883 particles of microplastic every day. I mean, that just sounds insane to me. Anyway, so I know that has obviously been a huge factor in our, not only our immune system, but our overall health. And that plays a huge role in our health and longevity. So anyway, just wanted to throw that in there because I think the topic of, you mentioned toxins, I think that toxins are just continuing to just be more and more harmful, which is why one of the reasons I think we see, autoimmune diseases on the rise, as well as many other issues.
I absolutely agree with you. If we think that there are more than 50,000 new chemicals that have been introduced into our environment over the last 30 years, of which we don't really understand, even naively, the immune or neurological effects of those chemicals at low level. We assume that, because they're at very low level in parts per million or part per billion, that they don't have any adverse effect. But some of these have very, very specific effects, even at very low levels, on immune function and on nervous system function. So we're starting to recognize that the whole concept of what's called immunotoxicology and neurotoxicology needs to go beyond that of being poisoned to that of being chronically ill, where you're just damaging your body's ability to rejuvenate itself. And good news is that our capability of generating this resilience is within our genetic capabilities. It's just that you need to give the right kind of tools in order to get there. And then that begs the question, well, what are the right tools and how do they get personalized? Because no two individuals are identical. So do we have one generic list of things to do, or do we have a general list that gets specified to individual needs? And that's where I think the secret sauce lies, in really understanding the individual so you can deliver the message that is most beneficial for their immune defense.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that's why personalized medicine and nutrition is so incredibly important. You have to look at so many different factors, lifestyle, medical history, genetics, availability, access. I mean, there's so many different factors to consider with someone. But for the sake of our listeners here, in this moment, we know this is personalized, as all nutrition and medicine should be. However, if you had to just pick 3 things, or you could choose a couple more if you want, but if you had to just pick a few things for someone to start doing right now to improve their immune system and dive into their own immunorejuvenation, what would those few things be?
Yeah, I think there are 3 areas that come out of the nutrition world that have emerged to be very, very primary of importance in rejuvenating the immune system. And when I say these 3 things, it's probably not going to be a revelation, but what is revelational about it is the understanding of the individual mechanisms by which they work on rejuvenating the immune system and the actual composition of these ingredients that actually play this important role to do the heavy lifting. So what are those 3 things? In no necessary order of priority, these 3 things are polyphenols or flavonoids from the diet, which I will talk more about here in a second. Number 2 are pre and probiotics that interrelate to the gut microbiome. And number 3 are essential fatty acids of the omega-3 family that include the pro-resolving mediators that are very important for quenching inflammation. Those 3 categories are principally important. They form kind of a team of interacting. So 1 + 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3, it equals hundreds. You get a multiplicative effect of synergy when these things are delivered to the body. And we now understand the mechanism by which these occur and why they play principal roles upstream or as a root cause for improving our immune system. So we're not talking here again about boosting. We're talking about, as you said, even beyond supporting. We're talking about activating the body's rejuvenation process to
Oh yeah, I like
get rid of these
rejuvenation a
clinker
lot
cells.
more. I like rejuvenation a lot more than supporting. So I'm taking on your word. Of course, always give you. You are the one that coined that term. But from now on, not supporting. We don't want to just support. We don't want to boost for sure, but we don't want to just support. We want to rejuvenate. I love that. So flavonols, pre and probiotics, and the omega-3 essential fatty acids. I am with you. You are speaking my language. I'm so happy to hear that you just mentioned those 3 buckets. And I want to dive in. Let's dive into each of them a little bit. And by the way, I'm very happy right now thinking that not only do I get those things in my food on a daily basis, in my diet, but I also take supplements in each of those areas. So I'm feeling rejuvenated.
That's
I'm
why you
feeling
look
like
so
I
good.
should be really rejuvenated.
Yes, you look that
Okay.
way.
All right. So yeah, let's dive into flavonols, one of my favorites, because I mean, I don't even know if you know, but I wrote actually, my second book that I wrote was all about antioxidants. So I'm a flavanol fan for a long time. So let's talk. Let's dive into that, because I want to know that we know the connection from antioxidants in general fight free radicals. Free radicals can cause all kinds of damage, everything from affecting your immune system, increasing inflammation, heart disease, cancer, even wrinkles, all of that. But I want to hear from your perspective more about flavonols, your favorite place to get flavonols, and the direct link to the immune system. I want to take a moment to tell you about our podcast sponsor, which I'm a super fan of. In today's fast-paced, go world, it's so easy to get overwhelmed and lose focus, especially when you're trying to accomplish critical tasks that require a sharp mind. If you're looking for a way to support your brain health and stay on top of your game, if you know me at all, you know I'm always looking to do that. Well, then you want to know about cognizin citicoline. This nutrient helps support brain function, and it plays a vital role in nourishing and protecting brain cells. Cognizin citicoline can help support focus, memory, and attention, promote cognitive performance, and support overall brain health. It's also known for its ability to support brain energy and is backed by numerous studies that show its effectiveness. Whether you're a student, a busy professional, a multitasking parent, or anyone looking to optimize mental clarity and sharpness, adding cognizin citicoline to your daily routine can help you achieve those goals and support your brain for the future. It can be found in many different products, including chewables, gummies, beverages, and even cold brew coffee. Visit cognizin.com for exactly where to find this ingredient, and don't forget to look for cognizin on the label. But I want to hear from your perspective more about flavonols, your favorite place to get flavonols, and the direct link to the immune system. I know that was a lot, but I know you can handle it.
No, that was fantastic. So first of all, I agree entirely with everything that you just said about antioxidants. But now I want to take a step beyond that. The big deal, the big discovery, and this is new. When I say new, within probably the last 5 years, it's become much more well understood that the role that these plant-derived nutrients have on health is much more than antioxidants.
Yeah.
They actually serve as modulators of how our genes are expressed. This is called epigenetics.
Yep.
This is above our genes. And this is an aha. This is a huge translational new discovery. Nutrition textbooks that are being used to teach nutrition students today are out of date already because these discoveries are so new and so dramatic in changing our view as to the role that these compounds, of which there are, by the way, over 5,000 of them in different foods. So these are extraordinarily rich families of different substances found in different foods, fruits and vegetables, and, and legumes and so forth. And they play a role, very specific role, through modulation of cellular processes associated with how our genetic information is going to be expressed into different cells that become our function. And, I think it's interesting because people still believe about this genetic determinism that we are our genes. Well, it is true that genes play a big, important role in our operant structure and function. But what is not true is that there is just one way that our genes are expressed. Our genes have all sorts of ways they can be expressed, and they're expressed on the basis of the experience that we have in our life, our exposures, our environments, our relationships. And those particular things that wash over our genes induce what is called epigenetic changes. These are marks that are put on the genes. They are memory effects that put on the genes that I say are really of two types. One kind of mark is kind of putting a paperclip on the pages of the book of life saying, don't read these pages. The other kind of epigenetic mark is like a sticky note you put on your book saying, read here. Right. So you've got these sticky notes and you've got these paper clips that are stuck onto your genes that tell the body how it's going to actually participate in how it does its work and how it looks and acts and feels. And it turns out that what has been discovered is these flavonoids, polyphenols from these fruits and vegetables, vegetable products, have extraordinarily important roles in modulating how our genes are expressed. They're like the shop bosses, like the executive centers that upstream are telling the body how it's going to perform and behave in response to your environment. So this is
by the way, I feel like sorry not to interrupt you, but I feel like we got to give a shout out to our friend who was one of the two people that introduced us at IHS, Yael Jaffe here from 3x4. I feel like because this is this is her whole space and what she does and what she focuses on. So I feel like I had to mention, that Yael Jaffe was one of the ones that introduced us along with Ashley Koff, right? At IHS?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. You're bringing her to I'm thinking of her as you're talking about this. So as you're talking about the epigenetics. So had to give her a little shout out there.
Well, when the three of you had the chance to get together with me, I felt this was like the vortex of energy. The three of you were like wellspring of knowledge and energy. So yeah, it was quite a conversation.
Yeah, no, that was so fun. Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but just felt like I had to give a little 3x4 love there.
Absolutely. I've known Yael for many years, and she is definitely a leader in the nutrigenomics area, without question. So this concept of different foods that are rich in these polyphenols and flavonoids is really an important thing. And if you look at Dan Buettner's work on the blue zones, and actually start to ask the question, what are the diets that these people in blue zones eat? And they're varied diets because the people that live in Costa Rica are different than the people that live in Vilcabamba, are different than the people who live in the Philippines and so forth. But if you look at their dietary composition, they all consume very high levels of polyphenols and flavonoids in their diet from their vegetable components of their diet. And those polyphenols have these important roles to regulate how genes are expressed through these epigenetic, epi meaning above the genes type of mechanisms. We got involved with this, as you know, Keri, a number of years ago with a discovery of this kind of forgotten food that was actually one of the foods that our ancestors who came over and were the early colonists brought with them from Europe, that actually came through Marco Polo's exploration into Asia, and it's called Tartary buckwheat. And Tartary buckwheat was a big food that our early ancestors here in the United States, pre-United States, colonial period, were consuming. And somehow about 200 years ago, it got lost. It got replaced by the cultivars of wheat and soy and barley and oats and so forth. And we didn't have Tartary buckwheat available. We kind of rediscovered it a number of years ago as a fortuitous kind of coincidence with a series of events. And we found there was only one person that was actually growing it in the United States at the time. This is about 3 to 4 years ago. He was a former agricultural research professor from Cornell. And he and his nurse wife had a hobby farm outside of Ithaca, Angelica, New York. And they had gotten these seeds from the USDA that he did collaborative research with USDA. And so he'd gotten these seeds and they were just labeled with a number. He didn't really know what they were. And he started growing them. This is almost like a Jack and the Beanstalk story. He really liked the way the plants grew. They were very pretty. He then later found out that they were a form of buckwheat, but they were not. And by the way, buckwheat is not a wheat. That's I don't even know how it got its name. It's not even related genetically.
I wanted to mention that because anyone hearing this and that might be gluten free, or buckwheat is actually gluten free. It is not. It is not a wheat. I think that for good reason. Many people get confused with that. So I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, buckwheat in and itself is a really good food. So I don't want to sound anything disparaging about buckwheat. But it turns out that tartary buckwheat, and a specific form of tartary buckwheat, which comes from the Himalayan mountains called Himalayan tartary buckwheat, which is a variant of the tartary buckwheat form. By the way, the word tartary comes from the Tartan district of China. That's where these originally, and this is one of the oldest foods. This and millet are the two oldest foods that were husbanded by humans 4,000 years ago. So this is a very, very old food. And it turns out that because it lives in this very hostile environment in the Himalayan mountain regions, and it gets cold and it gets hot and it gets droughts and it's bad soil and so forth and so on, a lot of radiation at high altitude. In order to survive over the millennia, it evolved its defense mechanism. The immune system of the tartary buckwheat plant is extraordinarily active, and it can live under very challenging circumstances. It's one of the reasons it was a good food for our colonial ancestors. It was resistant to bugs. It didn't need any fertilizer. It didn't need pesticides. It didn't even need to be watered. It was really very, very hardy. It even can live in poor quality aluminum-rich soils. And so when we started studying tartary buck, we found that, lo and behold, if you analyze its phytochemical composition, the plant-derived chemicals of which the flavonoids are a major part, we found there were over 150 different flavonoids. And not only were they a lot of different ones, they were in very, very high levels. In fact, it's 50 to 100 times higher in certain flavonoids than is common buckwheat. Not just 50%. I'm saying 50 to 100 times higher. It's like a pharmaceutical plant for the immune system. And so
and just as a frame of reference for people, just so they understand that traditional buckwheat is a high nutrient dense, high in antioxidants, grain. It's already extremely nutrient dense. So when you're saying that 50 times more flavonols, you're not comparing that to something like a highly processed white bread. You're comparing that to an already super nutrient dense grain.
Exactly. Thank you.
So I just want people to understand sort of the difference there, because buckwheat in general, like you already mentioned, is a good nutrient dense food. And so I think that's really, I think that just gives it even deeper perspective.
Thank you. So we got so invested in this because of our interest in the immune system that eventually I formed a relationship with Sam Beer, the owner of the Angelica Farms, with his wife, and we bought their Angelica mills. We now have a consortium of organic farmers who are growing tartary buckwheat in upstate New York for us. I've got my hands in the soil. We're regenerative agriculture aficionados.
Incredible.
And it's been a really extraordinary adventure for me and my colleagues. That really is why we started this little company called Big Bold Health, because we thought we were onto something that was really quite bold and quite unique, that has a big idea as it relates to the immune system. So as we got studying this in greater detail and started producing enough that we got chefs involved and we got recipe books and guides and so forth, so we could really start to see how we could bring this product back into the American commerce. Then we discovered something, and I thought, I'm now giving you brand new insider information.
Love it. Just for our listeners here.
Yes, it's the first time ever I think I've talked about this.
I love it.
We were looking at what happens in the germination process of Himalayan tartary buckwheat seed. These seeds are very unique. They're very tough, and they have a hard shell on them, and that's probably why they can survive for hundreds of years without having been germinated. And so we started really looking at the germination process of the tartary buckwheat seed, ultimately into the tartary buckwheat plant. And now having fields of the plant that we grow and harvest in our organic farms, we thought, what's with the germination process itself? So we started looking at different days of sprouting, of 2-day sprouts, 4-day sprouts, 6-day sprouts, and just analyzing the nutrient content of the sprouts as they grew up into a plant. And we found that there was a specific point when the sprouts were growing that their nutrient levels were so high we couldn't believe it. In fact, they were 5 times higher in polyphenols than was the final seed that we harvest to make flour. So
Wow.
when I said you have 50 times more to 100 times more certain flavonoids in Tartary buckwheat flour than you do normal buckwheat flour, now we can have 5 times that amount in the
In the
buckwheat
sprouts.
sprouted powder. Yes. So we are now producing, for the first time ever,
Wow.
organically produced Himalayan Tartary buckwheat sprout powder, which 2 teaspoons of that sprout powder provides as many immune strengthening polyphenols as a half a cup of the flour or 3 cups of normal buckwheat.
Oh,
So now
that's amazing.
we're using nature as kind of
Right.
our ally here to do the work
Well,
for us.
that's a good question. So actually, that makes me think of a good question. I think if you don't want to use the flour and of the sprouted or the Himalayan Tartary buckwheat, and you're not going to use the flour, how else can you consume this? What other forms can you get it in? Can you get it in a supplement form?
Yeah, we've worried about that because not everybody's a baker, not everybody spends a lot of time in the kitchen, and
Right.
so we thought we have to find multiple ways of making this available. So we do have this whole uh, concentrate of the Himalayan Tartary buckwheat in in a shake mix. We call
Mm-hmm.
it a superfood. We also have it in capsule form, in concentrated form. So several
Okay.
different delivery systems: sprouts,
Okay.
flour,
Yeah.
shake mix,
Well,
capsules.
that's what I was wondering actually, the shake mix, like could you just take the flour and put it in a smoothie but you actually you tweaked it. What's the difference between what you call the shake mix and then just the flour?
Yeah, thank you. The shake mix is a complete nutritional blend of all the kind of vitamins and minerals that are immune supportive, and as well
Okay,
as
got it.
protein. And, it's a meal
Got
basically
it. Okay.
with added the HTV. And by the way, as an aside, we don't recommend the flour itself to be eaten raw. You can take the
Okay.
sprout
That's
powder
why
raw,
that's yeah.
but the flour really needs to be cooked into some kind of a product. We have a whole
Okay.
recipe guide for that.
Okay. Amazing. So I mean, it sounds like everybody should be consuming some Himalayan Tartary buckwheat. But
That's my belief.
let's just say people they do not have their hands on that yet, or they're not interested in that. Just what are some of your other favorite ways to get flavanols into the diet on a daily basis, since like you said, they're one of those 3 nutrients that you believe everybody should be consuming for maximum immunorejuvenation?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think the simple rule here is that any vegetable or fruit product that has a color to it, a natural color,
Right.
by the nature of that, has a unique family of various types of phytochemicals that are associated with the flavonoid or polyphenol family. So as my colleague Dr. Deanna Minnick has said, eat the rainbow. So as
Right.
you eat with different food and vegetable products of different colors, orange, red, blue, yellow, you're getting different families of these important phytochemicals that modulate then the immune system in very specific ways. So I think, again, that's a good rule of thumb is eat the rainbow. Try to have as many portions as you can each day of fruit and vegetable materials in their state of still retaining their natural goodness.
Yep, amazing. I'm with you there. I am with you there. Let's talk a little bit more about gut health, and it also connects back to one of the other 3 things that you mentioned that people should be thinking about when it comes to immunorejuvenation, which is pre and probiotics. And as you mentioned, over 60, and I thought it was over 70, but I'm going to listen to you here. Percent of the immune cells live in the gut, so we know that our gut health is critical for, so many things for our brain health, for our overall health, and specifically for our immune health. And as you mentioned, pre and probiotics are critical for that. Just a little refresher for everyone. Prebiotics are not bacteria. They are really the food for the non-digestible compounds that serve as food sources for the healthy bacteria, those probiotics in your gut. And then the probiotics are the good bacteria. So they're good bacteria. They offer some health benefit to you. So prebiotics, food for probiotics, probiotics, the good bacteria. So as you mentioned, Jeff, you like pre and probiotics for your immunorejuvenation plan. What are your favorite ways to get in your pre and probiotics?
Yeah, thank you. Once again, this is an area that really we've been doing quite a deep dive. So it turns out that when we talk about food for your friendly bacteria, the prebiotic foods, these bacteria have selective appetites. And so different types of friendly bacteria have different things that they like to eat as prebiotic foods. So it used to be we just talked about fiber in a generic sense, like increase the fiber in your diet. And I think that's a good tool.
Right. It's a good start for most people that aren't getting enough fiber in their diet, right?
Yes. But then within the concept of fiber are many, many different specific types of prebiotic materials that are we call non-digestible carbohydrates. Like one that would have a name that would be probably very esoteric to most people is called D-chiroinositol. And it's found in certain kind of food products. It actually turns out to be fairly high in Tartary buckwheat. And it is a fiber prebiotic material that improves certain bacteria that are associated with the reduction in women of polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so there's quite a bit of research on the DCI, D-chiroinositol, and PCOS. So you can also look at forms that are associated with the reduction of what's called gut permeability or leaky gut. And what are some of the fibers? Arachidongalactans, enzylogalactans, fructans. These are all names that food chemists put on some of these different fibers. What I have found is that there is a very interesting interrelationship between the microbes that are friendly in our gut and the foods that they like to eat if you go to the sources in nature where those fibers are found, and you find those bacteria generally hang out with them. They could be in the roots. They could be on the skin of the fruits. So there is this lineage of connection between our soil and our soil bacteria, between our plants and their bacteria, and the fiber materials that are in them, and then ultimately us and our immune systems and our gut bacteria. So we consider very strongly that the planet is connected to the soil, which is connected to the plants, it's connected to us.
Right. And it's that symbiotic relationship, right, where we find the pre and probiotics together.
That's exactly right. And one of the things that we actually learned when we were first kind of getting more comfortable in understanding Tartary buckwheat was that in order to make the flour, we would have to dehull the seeds. And that's about 25% of the weight of the seed was this material that actually was very, very coarse and was very not something you could really consume and enjoy. So we were throwing that away as we made the flour. And then I got the idea. I said, well, just a minute here. When we sprout these seeds, the sprouts have their own ability to kind of convert some of that coarse hull material into digestible or utilizable fiber. So now our Himalayan Tartary buckwheat sprout powder has all the natural fibers that have already been pre-digested, so to speak, by the sprouting process. So nature has this wisdom in it. We just have to sometimes learn from nature.
We've gotten way too far away from nature for the most part, I would say, on our on a daily basis. I mean, you're right there in nature, and I'm loving it. Everything you're doing is really, like you said, going back to nature, and I love that. I mean, even just you mentioned millet before. It's an ancient grain. Right, Himalayan Tartary buckwheat is an ancient grain. We got to get back, right? We got to get back to the earth and the way nature intended food to be.
Here. I totally agree. Yeah. By the way, just to let people know, the Himalayan Tartary buckwheat certainly looks like a grain, but it actually is not a grain. It's a fruit seed. It's not a
Okay.
grain.
Right.
So
Right.
it's an interesting variation on
Right.
seeds.
I guess if you're watching the video here, you can see it's a grain, but it's not a grain.
Exactly.
Those were some air quotes there, people, for just people that are listening, right? It's like we call quinoa a grain. It's not a grain, it's a seed, right?
Right.
Sort of the same thing. It's a fruit seed.
So
Yeah.
let's go back to your point about the pre and probiotics. So one of the things that we did, which I think has been a really great step forward, is that we took the what we had learned from Tartary buckwheat and its prebiotic fiber, and we started looking around at probiotic organisms that really like that prebiotic fiber, that flourish in the presence of that Tartary buckwheat fiber. And we found a strain that had been actually highly studied in human research called Lactobacillus rhamnosus 1505, a specific strain of a Lactobacillus bacilli probiotic organism. And it turns out it really likes the fiber that's found in Tartary buckwheat. And there are clinical trials that have actually been done in humans, actually even in children. Over 14,000 children have been studied looking at lowered absenteeism and better school performance with taking this probiotic organism. So we put the probiotic organism Lactobacillus, and then we also found a unicellular microgreen, an algae that was very high in specific beta-glucan. That's another non-digestible fiber that has strong immune potentiating ability, that has a lot of human clinical studies showing, again, lower URIs, upper respiratory infections, lower absenteeism, better recovery from colds and flu. So we combine those together, the microalgae, the euglena actually, together with the probiotic organism, the Lactobacillus rhamnosus, and the fibers and polyphenols from Tartary buckwheat. We put it into a product called Microbiome Rejuvenate, and that has been an unbelievable product in the way we're getting feedback from people taking it. It's I'm just overwhelmed with the positive response that people are having that had long-term digestive problems or problems if they have food allergic type responses. They're really having good response to this formulation. So I think we're using nature kind of symbiotically in this product. And actually, we won in 2023. We won the Product of the Year award in the immune category with the development of that product.
Incredible.
So,
Yeah, that's incredible. And just to, again, just sort of to take it down a notch for people, just if you're learning about prebiotics for the first time and you hadn't really thought about them before, and when you think about your gut health, you're just thinking about, first just getting in some fiber, and you might know a little bit about probiotics, but prebiotics you can also find naturally in certain foods like chicory root, Jerusalem artichoke, garlic, and onions. So just again, for some people that are just sort of getting their feet wet with the pre and probiotic conversation, those are some other ways that you can get prebiotics into your diet on a regular basis.
very well stated. Yes. And again, goes back to, I say, eat close to the earth. Things that look like they once grew in the ground have a lot of nutritional value, and these prebiotic fibers are one of those.
Yeah. There's so much more I want to talk to you about. I could talk to you for hours and hours. I learned so much from you. This is so fascinating. I absolutely love what you were doing with Big Bold Health. So I have one more question for you before I ask you to tell everyone where they can find all of this information. And we will put all the information in the show notes as well, but I want you to tell them as well. My last question for you. You know what a nutritious life is all about. How do you, on a daily basis, sort of ignite your living a nutritious life? How do you, what's that one thing that you do on a daily basis to sort of put that nutritious life in motion?
Well, I think you said it beautifully earlier. I couldn't say it better than you said it. And that is nutritious life. Nutrition comes from many different things. It's not just the food we eat. We're nourished by the relationships we have. We're nourished by being present in nature. We're nourished by reading a good book, listening to poetry. I mean, we're fed on so many different levels. So a nutritious life is a portfolio. It's a canvas of all sorts of information that signals to our body a smiling immune system. And I wake up every day thinking about how can I construct out of my day ways that my body is rejoicing the opportunity to be present. It's living a nutritious life.
Ooh, I
And
love that. I just got the chills. That's good. And I like
well,
that. I like
thank
the
you.
canvas analogy, that whole thing. I love it.
Well, thank you. That's kind of my, then we get down into the piece parts of the details. Okay, then what does that mean? Well, for me, I because I'm a type A behavior person, I've got to kind of manage the stress, manage the hyperfunction, got to manage the sleep. So I use a sleep monitor to kind of make sure I'm on my sleep hygiene program. I have certain tools that I'm using that are related to my uniqueness as I've observed them over the 77 years of living. So I think that's kind of how I embrace each day.
Incredible. Amazing. Like I said, we've got so much more to talk about. We're going to have you back on to talk about lots more things, everything else going on at Big Bold Health. I want to talk to you about inflammation in our next conversation. And yeah, like I said, could just talk to you forever. But in the meantime, everyone listening, Flavonols, pre and probiotics, and those omega-3 essential fatty acids. Those are 3 things you can incorporate into your daily nutrition that can really help you on your journey to immuno-rejuvenation. Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And lastly, where can everyone find you and everything about Big Bold Health?
They can go to bigboldhealth.com. We've got a pretty large amounts of resources they can download there about this whole immunorejuvenation concept, or they can also go to jeffreybland.com. That's JEFFREY Bland, BLAND.com. And there we have, again, I don't know, 30 years worth of stuff we've stuck in there for people to access if they're interested. So, yeah.
Incredible. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, Keri, it's my pleasure, and you're doing a fantastic job in sending the information that is so valuable for people. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, that means so much from you. Thank you so much.